Please be seated. Family and friends of the graduates, honored guests, faculty, staff, commencement speakers, graduating seniors, award winners, and PhDs. Welcome to the commencement exercises of the Sociology Department at the University of California at Berkeley. My name is David Harding, and it's my privilege and pleasure to be the chair of the most fantastic sociology department in the world, the Berkeley Department of Sociology. Before we begin, I'd like to explain some general rules so that everyone can fully enjoy the program. This year's commencement is particularly special for two reasons. First, many of this year's graduates completed high school in 2020. They missed their chance to walk across the stage then due to the pandemic. Second, this year we are privileged to have as our commencement speaker Professor Harry Edwards, who is not just an eminent sociologist, but who has been on the front lines of the fight for racial justice for his entire life. And as always at sociology commencement, many of our graduates are the first in their family to earn a college degree, a particularly momentous occasion for them and for their families. With this spirit in mind, I request that you please silence your cell phones, stay in your seats, and keep the aisles clear. Please refrain from blocking others' views of the ceremony, and please refrain from preventing others from hearing the program. We want all of our graduates and their families to hear their names as they walk across the stage. Thank you for your cooperation. As the department concludes its 77th year at this university, we have over 300 graduating seniors. They arrived here at Berkeley via over 300 different pathways. They leave us with at least one thing in common: a shared sociological vision that enables them to see the world as it really is, and thus empowers them to be effective agents of positive change in the many fields to which they will contribute in the future. Joining me on the stage are department faculty and our speakers. I will quickly introduce them. We know you love them, but please reserve your cheering until the end. In the back row, on my left, our graduate student speaker, Skylar Wang, Professors Ricardo Hammer, Laura Enriquez, Marina Romani, and Joanna Reed. In the front row, on my left, our keynote speaker, Professor Harry Edwards, Dean Rocca Ray, Professors Michael Borovoy, Mary Kelsey, and Lale Babahanian. In the back row on my right, our undergraduate speaker, Nida Zahid, Professors Yan Long, Martine Sanchez-Jankowski, Jill Bacorn, John Kaiser, Joe Klett, and Tiana Pichel. In the front row on my right, Professors Eliza Brown, Mara Loveland, Neil Fligstein, Ann Swidler, Armando Laramion, and Kim Voss. Our department is renowned the world over for the accomplishments of our faculty and students. In recent rankings of both U.S. departments of sociology and sociology departments around the world, Berkeley was again ranked #1. Our faculty have won some of the most prestigious awards in the country, including membership in the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the National Academy of Sciences. We also have a former president of the American Sociological Association, who is also a former president of the International Sociological Association. Certainly the books and articles that our faculty write win major awards, but more important than the awards are the questions they ask and the careful research that they do that often challenges conventional thinking. The department's research and teaching urge attention to the most compelling questions of our time. How are we to understand the causes and consequences of enduring social and economic inequalities? The contemporary politics of immigration and the experience of immigrants and their children. The rise of the massive US prison system and its disparate consequences for different individuals, families, and communities. changes in the labor market and the shift to more and more precarious work, the effects of new social media on real-world social organization, how gender is changing the 21st century, the housing crisis and gentrification, the climate emergency, or the massive social movements and organized reactions to them sweeping the world. However, it is not only the research and accomplishments of our faculty that have brought renown to the department. It is equally the achievements of our students. Berkeley PhDs consistently win awards for their books and articles and shape the sociology departments of colleges and universities across the nation and the world. And our BAs populate the ranks of innumerable professions, bringing with them the skills and special perspective of Berkeley sociology. That perspective is profoundly shaped by the fact that Berkeley is a public university, and it is a public university in the state of California. Look around you. You will see that our graduates and their families reflect much of the magnificent variety of the people of California. The mission of public universities is simple. It is to educate the qualified children of all the people of the state, to bring the high-achieving children of janitors, nurses' aides, and dishwashers into classrooms with the children of doctors, lawyers, and community organizers. It is to make higher education accessible to students who are parents, who are differently abled, who are undocumented, who decide to return to school later in life, and who may have been formerly incarcerated. The public mission of UC Berkeley profoundly enriches what our students bring to the classroom and what they learn in the course of their university education. As we acknowledge and appreciate what the graduates sitting before you have accomplished to arrive at this day, and to anticipate with excitement all the wonderful things that they will contribute to society in the years ahead, I hope that we can pledge to fight to maintain accessible and excellent public higher education for the generations who will follow. In these times, more than ever, we must work together to ensure that the state and the University of California keep its promises to its people. And now it's time to turn to the commencement speeches. Each of our speakers has prepared remarks for you that come from their own hearts and express how they understand the current occasion and the current historical moment. We begin the program with the undergraduate address. Our speaker today is Naida Zahid. Please join me in welcoming Naida to the podium.
Okay, good morning and assalamu alaikum, distinguished guests, esteemed faculty and staff, bewildered parents, families, and friends, shout out to my family, and of course the stars of the show this morning, my fellow graduates. I stand before you as one of the products of UC Berkeley's Department of Sociology. Let's face it, a lot of people don't even know what sociology is until you tell them your major and they look at you confused. So you tell them, oh, it's like psychology, except instead of trying to understand individuals, you're looking at them in societies. I myself have had to repeat that numerous times. But despite the trials and tribulations, we made it. We conquered the mountains of readings, survived the endless debates of Marx, and somehow managed to turn in our final papers somewhat on time. Sociology is like being a detective of society. Instead of solving crimes, we're trying to decode and understand the social fabrics of our world. We've looked at the complexities of human society, trying to understand the intricate webs of relationships, institutions, and cultural norms that shape our world. But beyond the theories and concepts of Marx, Durkheim, Bourdieu, and everyone else, our education in sociology has equipped us with invaluable skills that transcend the world of academia. It has taught us to critically examine the complexities of society, to question ingrained norms, and confront injustices wherever they may be found. As we stand here on the threshold of a new chapter new chapter of our lives, it is crucial that we acknowledge and address the injustices that persist in our world today. One such injustice that weighs heavily on our collective conscience for the past 7 months is the ongoing genocide in Palestine. The plight of the Palestinian people The plight of the Palestinian people serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked power, systematic oppression, and the failure of international institutions to uphold basic human rights. So as students of sociology, we cannot turn a blind eye to these injustices. We must use our knowledge and our voices to amplify the cries of the oppressed, to demand accountability from those in power, and to work towards a just and lasting solution. With how diverse sociology is, whether we pursue careers in sociology, business, law, education, or any other field, we carry the essential tools for navigating the complexities of this world. And with that in mind, as we embark on this new and exciting stage of life, let us remember that success is not measured solely by the job titles we hold, the salaries we earn, but by the impact we make on the lives of others. Whether we choose to work in research, advocacy, or community service, I hope we are all able to use our skills and knowledge to create a more just, equitable, and compassionate society. I think that's what this world really needs today. Let us carry this power of knowledge forward as we strive to make a difference. And let us not forget all the support and guidance we've received along the way, from our amazing professors who constantly challenge us to think critically, to our beloved GSIs, the unsung heroes of our education, who patiently guided us through the confusing webs of sociological theories and thinkers. We owe you a debt of gratitude. And to our families and friends who cheered us through the inevitable ups and downs, thank you. No matter how alone you may have ever felt, know that not a single one of us has reached this point alone, and that someone out there, whether they sit in the audience with us today or not, has always been rooting for you. So as we celebrate our graduation today, let us commit ourselves to the pursuit of justice, equality, and liberation for all peoples, including those suffering in Palestine today. Let us carry with us the lessons we have learned, the friendships we forged, and the memories we've made along the way. And let us use our education in sociology not only to understand the world, but to change it for the better. And let us approach the future with courage, curiosity, and a healthy dose of skepticism. Congratulations to the class of 2024. May your journey ahead be guided with compassion, courage, and a steadfast commitment to social justice and a free Palestine.
Thank you, Nida. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage our graduate speaker, Skylar Wang.
A bit lower, actually. Is that okay? Thank you. Perfect. Yeah, thank you. All right. Good morning, esteemed faculty and staff, proud family and friends, and my fellow graduates. First off, I want to start by acknowledging the many students I've had the privilege of teaching sitting here in the audience today. I'm so proud of each and every one of you. That said, these very students also know that I'm not big on prepping for public speaking. I kind of just show up to class and do my thing. So this format is a little bit nerve-wracking for me, but because I care about you, prep for this I did. In fact, I spent an entire evening last week Googling what exactly goes into a commencement speech. Writing for The Atlantic, American historian Drew Faust calls commencement speeches a strange ritual where everything and nothing is at stake. He notes that no generation can really explain to another what is to come, and that these speeches so rarely succeed, one ought to be surprised when they do. I was this close to putting a prompt into ChatGPT before finally deciding, I'm not going to give you the answer to your future. I'm just going to talk about what I know best, which is hospitality. Some of you here know that I spent the last 7 years of my life traveling around the world by way of couchsurfing, a practice that formed the basis of my dissertation research. In case you are unfamiliar, couchsurfing is a digital network that connects people who are interested in sharing their accommodations with travelers from all over the world. Unlike Airbnb, members of this community don't pay for a place to stay. People welcome strangers into their homes and sometimes shower them with the gift of hospitality. Oftentimes. I've had hosts who cooked for me and took me out on city tours, hikes, visits to their alma maters, and even to the cemeteries where their loved ones were buried. Many of those whom I interviewed for the dissertation carved out special places for me in their homes, no matter how poor or rich they were. They poured their hearts out, laughed and cried with me, another stranger, and now I regard many of them as family. When I tell people about the couchsurfing community, I always get these two questions. Why do people do this? What do they get out of it? For me, I believe these people live by what I call the 3 fundamental principles of hospitality. During my time at Berkeley, I witnessed firsthand how receiving and extending hospitality enriched my experience. And here are the principles. Principle number 1, hospitality is a general attitude to life. Many couchsurfers I've met during fieldwork saw caring for people as a calling that gives meaning to life itself. They're hospitable not just in the context of couchsurfing, but they extend hospitable behavior across different domains of their lives. In fact, one of the most memorable quotes I collected from one of my informants was, "How can you not be hospitable to your friends, family, and coworkers when you already do so much for a stranger?" Extending this to institutional life here at Berkeley, I've had the pleasure of receiving hospitality from so many people, many of whom are here in this hall today. These people showed me the ropes, read my work, quelled my anxiety, and created a space where I could grow, make mistakes, and learn from them. They were patient and generous with me, and for that, I'm a better person today. Whether you're intrinsically motivated to help people or you see it as a reward mechanism for future gains, hospitality can create an environment for people to thrive. And if you believe in the old saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything, then I hope you get to experience what being hospitable to those around you could unlock. Principle number 2, extending hospitality is particularly valuable during difficult times. Couchsurfers are not the easiest group of people to deal with. Many travel on a budget, and their journeys to a place are susceptible to last-minute delays and cancellations. I was once severely delayed due to bad weather, and my host had to wait for 2 hours at the airport to pick me up. When we got to his place, he made me a late-night snack and made sure that I was warm and nourished after a long day of traveling. At no point did he complain or make me feel bad. Being at the receiving end of this gracious hospitality from a person I have never met in my life was nothing short of life-changing. People appreciate hospitality when hospitality is in short supply. While doing my PhD here, there were times when I was lost, emotionally drained, or simply too stubborn to do what was right or good for myself. I appreciate the patience and hospitality my advisors and peers showed me when I struggled. They listened, motivated me, and acted without blame. Their hospitality afforded me the space to do what I needed to do to get myself back on track. I owe a large chunk of my self-confidence today to how they treated me during trying times. Last but not least, principle number 3, hospitality is the antidote to violence. Jacques Derrida reminds us that hospitality and hostility come from the same Latin root, hostis, which at once means enemy and guest. There's wisdom in learning from our predecessors who welcomed strangers in pilgrimages into their homes and gave them the best they had to offer. The logic here is simple. Showering potential enemies with kindness may rid them of ill intent, converting enemy into guest, hostility into hospitality. In this socio-political climate where conflict evolves quickly into violence, I wonder what the spirit of hospitality might offer us. To be generous to people you disagree with, to act with understanding and compassion, to communicate with respect and care. If you allow hospitality to be a general mental state, it could foster empathy, bridge divides, and pave the way for constructive dialogue. To wrap up, I want to express my gratitude to my committee members, Marian Foucault, Ann Switler, Eliza Brown, and Kyle Morrow, for their patience and guidance throughout my time here. I promise to pay it forward by extending the hospitality you've gifted me to my future students and colleagues at McGill University. Next, my peers. Many of you are here today. Among this group, I want to give a special shout out to Margaret Eby, actually Dr. Margaret Eby. Your friendship is one of the most cherished gifts of my time here at Berkeley Sociology. I cannot wait for you to officiate my wedding this summer. And of course, through you, I now have the frills in my life. Hi. So I'm waiting for you guys to make a noise. Haley, Margie, and Michael, thank you for adopting me as one of your own. Thanksgiving at your house is second to none. I'm so blessed to be at the receiving end of your infectious hospitality. Finally, to my partner, Jack Ching, you're my rock, the reason I can focus on things that matter to me. Thank you for every little sacrifice. I take none of it for granted. Having you in my life means the world to me. As Zora Neale Hurston once wrote, there are years that ask questions and years that answer. As we gather here today, this quote resonates deeply. No matter where you are on that journey, I hope that it is one surrounded by hospitable people who can guide you through tough days and celebrate your every win. Congratulations, class of 2024. The world awaits your brilliance and your boundless potential. Go forth, make your mark upon it, and know that the future is yours for the taking. Thank you.
Thank you, Skylar. And now it's my pleasure to ask Raka Ray, one of our esteemed professors and Dean of the Social Sciences Division, to introduce our keynote speaker, Harry Edwards.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a delight to be here with you today to congratulate the class of 2024 and everybody else who is here in support of them. Today, I get to introduce to you a man who is not only a 1.5 feet taller than I am, but also truly a giant of a human being in every way, Professor Harry Edwards, who was professor of sociology at Berkeley between 1970 and 2000. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, Harry Edwards was awarded an athletic scholarship to San Jose State University, completed his PhD degree in sociology from Cornell, and then joined the Berkeley faculty. His experiences as an African American, as an athlete, and as a sociologist helped him to keenly understand in the late 1960s that sport in America was deeply racialized and discriminatory. With this understanding, he set about transforming race relations in sports through his research, teaching, mentoring, and activism. So, some of you might have seen the statues of Tommie Smith and John Carlos outside in San Jose State. If you haven't, they're great athletes, Tommie Smith and John Carlos, who won the 200, is that the 200 meters race in the 1968 Mexico Olympics, and then raised their fists in a Black Power salute. This was done because of Harry Edwards, who encouraged them to do this. He created the Olympic Project for Human Rights, which challenged racism in sports and called for the boycott of apartheid South Africa. Just the other day, he arranged for a personal video to be sent by gymnast Simone Biles to encourage a heartbroken 8-year-old Black Irish gymnast who had been ignored during a medal ceremony. He has used his keen sociological imagination and eye for justice to effect transformation in every sphere of sports that he could. As professor in the department, he taught thousands of students about the sociology of sports and race, effectively creating the field of sociology of sports, even as he advised the NBA, the NFL, and the Major Baseball League. Always a scholar and activist, he has insisted that struggle not be divorced from strategic analysis and intellectual consideration. Earlier this year, I was honored to present Harry with the Social Science for the Public Good Award for 2024. We have now renamed it the Harry Edwards Social Science for the Public Good Award. Please join me in welcoming Harry Edwards to the podium. We need to adjust this one.
Oh, yeah, a little bit. I got to make an adjustment here. People are vertically challenged, so I got to kind of make up for that. Dean Ray, thank you for that gracious and profoundly generous introduction. I hope that one day, soon, you and I and that gentleman that you introduced will be in the same room, and I'd like to meet him because he sounds like a heck of a guy. Graduating class of 2024, families and guests, colleagues, thank you so much for this opportunity to address you on this august occasion. The problem with being the last speaker is that everything that needs to be said has been said, you just haven't had a chance to say it. But I will try not to be too repetitive. Today we stand again on the threshold of transformative times. 60 plus years ago, my undergraduate graduation was a time of exhilaration, high expectations, and joy. I was a 21-year-old honors student and former scholarship athlete with the options of entering the pro football or basketball drafts or accepting one of several fellowships to graduate school. Strongly influenced by Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech at the 1963 March on Washington, I indulged the dream of helping to create a society where people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, the caliber of their competence, and the magnitude of their contributions to society. But hanging over and clouding my personal excitement and aspirations was a growing concern about what was happening in society and the world around me. American society was already badly divided over civil rights issues, and there was a growing division over the nation's expanding involvement in a far-off war in a place called Vietnam. And the president was coming under increasing criticism and pressure related to both. The trajectory of the domestic political climate had been set by the assassination of a popular president, John F. Kennedy, on November 22nd, 1963. A tragedy that for me was all the more bewildering because it occurred at what was a major coming-of-age phase of life for me. I was a graduating honors student with fellowships to Ivy League universities, and November 22nd, 1963 was my 21st birthday. The tragedy was followed by a long list of others, all within the period of my subsequent graduate school matriculation, including the murder of student civil rights workers Goodman, Cheney, and Swerner in Philadelphia, Mississippi, the assassination of the martyred president's brother, himself a presidential candidate, and other national leadership figures, some of whom I had come to know and work with personally, including Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., over the course of my graduate matriculation. By 1970, in my PhD graduation from Cornell, I had organized the 1968 Olympic Project for Human Rights in protest of racial conditions in America, America's support for apartheid in South Africa, and the continuing involvement in a war where casualties on all sides were escalating and young black men were being drafted and killed in grossly disproportionate numbers. Nationwide campus protests demanding that colleges and universities divest from apartheid South Africa had melded with what by then was a tsunami of anti-Vietnam War protest that even had disrupted the presidential nomination convention in Chicago in 1968. And most graphically, the nation's first war with real-time saturation TV coverage had brought into our living rooms the horrific scenes of religious figures setting themselves afire in front of the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, of dead and wounded anti-war student protesters at Kent State, and of black students in Orangeburg, South Carolina, killed and wounded while protesting segregation. And again, all considered, it would seem that today we stand again on the cusp of similarly turbulent times. A society badly divided over issues of race, immigration, women's rights, LGBTQ+ rights, and more. A president under increasing criticism and pressure from both his domestic political agenda and for his policies relating to America's involvement with, if not trending, complicity in a far-off war that has spawned popular dissent, campus protest, and now an active duty soldier setting himself afire outside of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., all of which have exacerbated our already existing divisions as a people on the eve of what is developing to the most significant presidential election, at least since 1968, if not 1860. There is even a presidential convention again being scheduled in Chicago. All of this combining to make the challenges we face today all the more explosive, convoluted, complex, and difficult to resolve. But there are critical differences. As a people, we did not know about the depths and scope of human tragedy that came with the expansion of the Vietnam War into Cambodia, or in the wake of that expansion, the horrors perpetrated by the Khmer Rouge until after these events happened. We did not know about the Rwanda genocide until after it happened. For the most part, we did not know about the scale and magnitude of 6 million+ souls whose lives were viciously and horrifically snuffed out until the gates and ovens of Buchenwald and Auschwitz were opened to the world after it happened. But today, right now, we know about 1,200 Israeli civilian deaths, 5,100 wounded and maimed, and 253 kidnapped and initially held hostages. We know about 35,000+ Palestinian civilian deaths, over 7,000 wounded and maimed, with 1,000 more buried under bombed-out rubble in Gaza, nearly 70% of them women, children, and babies. We know about a burgeoning administratively induced famine and the massive starvation in Gaza. Again, most of those threatened being women, children, and babies. And these differences between now and back in my day make a difference. And if you've ever wondered what you would have done had you been around and known about the march up to the atrocities in Cambodia, in Rwanda, in 1930s Germany, today you've got your answer. It's exactly what you are doing now. We can be honest even when we can't be right. The reality is that the last 75 years of this Middle East perennial conflict have taught us, attack after attack, war after war, that there is no military solution to this tragedy. The only viable resolution is for the parties involved to come together at the peace table and establish a mutually agreed upon and sustainable peace, not just a ceasefire, not just a temporary halt for hostilities in order to get in humanitarian supplies, but a sustainable peace. Other measures simply have not worked. Occupation is not peace, and a body count is not a measure of victory. So now, sanity compels us to concede that the only real question remaining is how many bodies each party to this conflict is going to insist upon climbing over to get to the peace table. And to this point, nobody on either side appears to even have a number in mind. The parties involved continue to forge headlong down the same paths, employing the same bankrupt strategies and expecting different outcomes. Outcomes that have only spawned more war and more violent attacks, doing the same things, expecting different outcomes, the very definition of insanity. As I stand here before you then, in the twilight of my life's time of long shadows from a perspective informed by my 81 years of experience and by a retrospective assessment of the lessons learned over my 60 years of activism. What is my advice and message to you young people today? What emerges as most critically germane and relevant in today's climate? First, even in turbulent times, in the midst of all of the challenges, contradictions, and confusion to be faced, never cease to believe in yourself and your capacities to realize your dreams. From time to time, you might have to take a different path than you had anticipated and planned, but you can still get there. Achievement of your dreams always begins with a belief in yourself. Never allow anyone to dissuade you of this imperative disposition. And if someone so much as even tries, you tell them that the good doctor said, you need to go and get a second opinion. The founding fathers believed in themselves. And they were not just a bunch of old dudes, as typically portrayed and memorialized. When you look at one of them paintings of 1776, everybody, if they're not gray, they're wearing a gray wig. On July the 4th, 1776, among the signers of the Declaration of Independence, creating the United States of America in the face of threats of hanging and a declaration of war from the British Empire, was James Monroe, 18, Aaron Burr, 20, Alexander Hamilton, 21, James Madison, 25, and old Thomas Jefferson, 33. Don't let anybody tell you you're nothing but a bunch of kids and don't know what you're doing. As I look at this situation today, it's easy to see how much ageism works into our perceptions and understandings of what we are and what we're dealing with. Don't get caught up not only in you too young, but the presidential candidates are too old. I was listening to somebody the other day. Did you see Biden trying to run up on the stage? Did you see him trying to hop up on the steps of Air Force One? He looked horrible. Hey, I want to tell you something. I'm Biden's age. I'm 81. I couldn't run out of sight if you gave me all day. You're not electing somebody who can run the 100 meters. You're not electing somebody who can set a world-class time in 110-meter high hurdles. You're electing a president. So we need to get over this nonsense and understand that this ageism and this ageist bias, there's no place for that. If they're too old, hey, guess what? Don't tell anybody old Edwards told you that, but it sounds to me like that's a problem that's going to probably take care of itself. So at the end of the day, get out and vote. Get your friends up off the couch and they start talking about, yeah, we can talk about how old the candidates are as we go to the poll and vote. So get out and vote. You're a part of the most informed, technologically savvy, and sophisticated generation in human history. You have capabilities and access to information, analysis, and communications technology that in the 1960s and 70s we not only did not have, we could not even imagine. The mobile phone that you routinely use every day puts more information, retrieval, analysis, and computing power at your fingertips than the rocket ship that took men to the moon in the 1970s and brought them back home safely. In fact, given the volume and scope of information, you need to make a habit of checking, cross-checking, and verifying everything. Hold to your dreams, but learn to dream with your eyes open. Second, keep the faith, not only in yourself, but in the ideals and promises of this nation, its institutions, and most of all, the majority of the American people. They're eminently decent, intelligent, and for the most part, value and treasure freedom. Though controversial and dismissed in some political circles as protester capitulation, and alternatively as pandering to protesters, it is affirming to see student protesters, counter-protesters, and university administrators coming together across the nation, from San Francisco State and Sacramento State to Rutgers in New Jersey, to discuss and debate issues of urgent and mutual concern. To paraphrase a number of university presidents and chancellors across the nation, if we cannot come together to discuss and debate these issues, even on our college campuses, in America, in an America that so many have struggled to realize and have fought and died for, then that America is doomed. Adversarial parties not just reaching over, but coming out from behind their barricades to sit down and discuss and debate contentious issues is a development that speaks persuasively to the conviction that American democratic traditions and processes not only work and can be saved, but that they are worth saving. And do not be concerned about the lack of apparent popular political cultural leaders. We never see them coming. We never have been able to see them coming. We didn't see Dr. King, a 26-year-old Baptist pastor coming out of Birmingham. We didn't see Malcolm X, a 26-year-old convict coming out of prison. We didn't see Donald, what's his name, coming, and didn't believe it when he got here. This old age is something you forget, you just forget. So stay positive. You're going to be all right. America is greater at this kind of struggle than any other nation on earth. Third, always cast and view societal challenges and their proposed solutions through a prism of inclusiveness. We as a people are more successful and effective at any task undertaken when we work together as opposed to working separately or against each other. To quote the illustrious writer and public intellectual James Baldwin and his warning in 1962 to the civil rights movement, no less than America more generally, unless we dare to include everybody in our strategic change strategies and efforts and goals, we are doomed to realize the prophecy of those words from the Bible put to song by a slave. And God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, the fire next time. And in our deafness to Baldwin's message, between the 1962 publication of his warning in his classic book of essays, The Fire Next Time, and the turn of the decade in 1970, over 150 American cities were ravaged with fire, riots, rebellions from Watts in Los Angeles to Newark, New Jersey. Episodes of lawlessness typically carried out by masses of people who felt left out and left behind by both mainstream America and a black middle-class oriented, deep South-focused, church-based civil rights movement. And finally, do not be afraid. The greatest storehouse and repository of human creativity, ingenuity, and strategic solutions on earth is in all probability the cemetery. Because far too often people are afraid to step out of their comfort zones, to take the chance of actively and aggressively pursuing their dreams and purposes in life. So tragically, for everybody concerned, ultimately they end up taking their dreams and potential contributions to the grave with them. And by no means should you be in fear of and immobilized by controversy. Controversy is all too often part of the deal. I heard a parent tell his daughter last week, who was participating in demonstrations, protesting, war and carnage. you involved in something controversial. I was born in controversy and became even more controversial than that. So you can get past it, you can get over it. Being controversial does not equate with being wrong, even when law enforcement is deployed against you. Police were sent in to break up student sit-ins, protesting segregation at lunch counters and other public accommodations in the 1960s. Police were sent in to break up voting rights protests marches led by John Lewis and others at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. Police were called on Rosa Parks for not giving up her seat on a bus, and she was arrested. Police were deployed to break up many of his protests, marches, and they arrested Dr. Martin Luther King 29 times. Deploying law enforcement to arrest protesters is not necessarily right or even a moral act. It is a legal act. It is an act of power. And all too often, depending upon the cause and its urgency, might still doesn't make right. In the broader context, we have an even greater problem with fear in these turbulent times. Fear and fear-mongering have become staples of our social political life as a society, to the point that it appears that everybody is afraid of somebody. Fear the left, fear the right, fear the immigrants, fear the progressives, fear the liberals, fear the conservatives, fear the Republicans, fear the Democrats, fear the government, fear the evangelicals, fear the secular humanists, fear the Muslims, fear the Jews, fear black males in hoodies, fear the rich and their power, fear the poor and their demands, fear women and their agenda for health care and equality, fear the MAGA devotees and their agenda, fear the LGBTQ+ and their agenda. Be whatever you want to be today, but first of all, be afraid. And someone, it seems, is always there, pledging to save you from everybody and everything that you fear, in exchange for your money, your loyalty, your support, your idolization, and your adulation of them. Let me conclude then with this. As I look out upon this graduating class, I am not the slightest bit hopeful that you and your generation will successfully confront and manage the challenges of these turbulent times. I am confident that you got this. You are just that much smarter, better equipped, and better prepared than any other generation in American history. So now, at this commencement, as you start your journeys into the rest of your lives, as an old scholar activist and UC Berkeley professor, I feel certain and completely convinced that the struggle to form that more perfect union and to create a better world is in good hands. And I salute and applaud you. Congratulations, best of luck, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, for that powerful and inspiring reminder of the connections between past and current struggles. Every one of our graduates here has accomplished a great deal, but we set aside this time to acknowledge some of their special achievements. I'd like to call our award and prize winners to the right side of the stage now. To present the awards, I call upon Professor Eliza Brown.
Each year, the department honors an outstanding graduating senior for overall accomplishment in sociology. This is the highest award we give to an undergraduate student. The committee looks especially at the paper or thesis submitted by qualified students, but also looks at general scholarship and demonstrated excellence throughout the student's entire career at Berkeley. This year's winner is Johnny Smith. Johnny Smith's thesis is The Care Control Dilemma: How Contemporary Synthetic Probation Officers Reconcile Occupational Duality. Johnny, please come forward to receive your award. I'd also like to recognize Ruhao Irene Pang, who received honorable mention for her exceptional thesis entitled, How Do You Decide Your Majors? A study of Asian American female college students' major choices. Ruhao Irene, please come forward to receive your award. Teaching at Berkeley is a partnership between professors and graduate student instructors, whom we call GSIs for short, and others called TAs or teaching assistants. A common arrangement is for professors to lecture twice a week and for GSIs to meet with students an equal number of times in smaller classes to discuss course materials. GSIs also work with students to plan research papers, prepare for exams, and more. Berkeley has many of the finest GSIs in higher education, and I know that each of the graduating seniors will remember one or more outstanding GSI from their years at Berkeley. Each year, the department and the university recognize a few of the very best ones with the Outstanding GSI Award. This year, we are honoring 5 students whose names appear in the program. We are very happy that 4 of our awardees are here today. Please come forward as I read your name. Tim An. Jose Avedanes. Janae Carpenter. Anthony Palafox. Each year, we also give prizes for academic work by graduate students in our department and honor the winners at graduation. In addition to the prestige of recognition, these prizes include a modest stipend. Herbert Bloomer Prize. This prize is given annually in memory of the founder of our department, Herbert Bloomer. It is given to the best paper written in a field of Professor Bloomer's interests, which included race, collective behavior, and symbolic interactionism. This year's winner is Tyler Leeds for the paper entitled The Biohabitus, Using Pain Science to Reconstruct Bourdieusian Theory. Tyler's paper is a wonderful piece of empirically grounded sociological theory in the tradition of Herbert Bloomer, UC Berkeley's sociology's founding father. Bloomer's interests included social psychology and symbolic interactionism. Tyler's reformulation of Pierre Bourdieu's concept of habitus speaks to those themes. Tyler brilliantly shows how pain can inhibit the expected formation of habitus. By extension, Tyler goes beyond stale debates counterposing the social and biological to instead show that they are inseparable. Leo Lowenthal Prize. The Leo Lowenthal Prize is given biennially in memory of Professor Lowenthal, the architect of sociology of literature and popular culture, distinguished contributor to critical theory, esteemed colleague, and beloved teacher in the department. The Lowenthal Prize is awarded to a graduate student whose research is in the spirit of Professor Lowenthal's pioneering work. This year's winner is Emily Ruppel for the paper entitled, How Work Becomes Invisible, the Erosion of the Wage Floor for Disabled Workers. Emily has written an exceptional paper on how work has become constructed as a service to the worker, such that employers can underpay for the labor. She takes the payment of subminimum wages to disabled workers as her case. She examines in detail how legislation worsened this practice in 1986. Asking how this happened, she investigates three causal dynamics: the rising power of employment program professionals, a crumbling disability labor coalition, and ongoing disability stigma. She theorizes this as a case of de-laborization. The paper stands out for both the ambition and the rigor of its research design, conceptualization, and argument. It makes a major contribution to several debates and exemplifies the kind of brilliant work done by graduate students in Berkeley sociology. She's also not present. We are also honoring our Leo Lowenthal Honorable Mention, Mary Shai, for her paper entitled, Until Indian Title Shall Be Fairly Extinguished, The Public Lands, Indigenous Erasure, and the Origins of Government Promotion of Infrastructure in the United States. Mary has written a terrific paper on the American government's early practice of representing still sovereign indigenous territory as economically valuable public lands in order to facilitate infrastructure construction. Shai extends the concept of politically light from more contemporary discussions of political economy. She argues that in early periods of US history, the government and private actors agreed to take for granted the eventual conquest and dispossession of indigenous nations. As a result, the government could promise to raise funds by mobilizing new public lands to facilitate raising debt to finance major infrastructure projects like the Erie Canal. This ambitious, exciting paper connects debates in economic sociology, indigenous studies, and the political economy of infrastructure, making major contributions in a variety of fields. Will Mary please come forward to receive this prize? Alumni Prize in Public Sociology. Sociology graduate students at Berkeley have long been renowned for using their research skills and intellectual energy to address public concerns beyond the confines of academia. The department has a special prize to recognize these efforts, the Berkeley Alumni Prize for Public Sociology. The selection committee received an excellent set of submissions and chose to give the award to Antonia Mardones Marshall. Antonia produced extraordinary public sociology work in three core areas: documentary filmmaking, immigrant advocacy, and Afro-descendant and indigenous peoples advocacy. Marshall has recently co-produced the award-winning documentary Una Escuela Llamada America, which details the experiences of immigrant children in a Chilean town near the border of Peru. She has also co-founded Chile Migra, a platform linking immigrants in Chile and Chileans living abroad, as she has helped create the Wellmapu Support Committee to advocate for the rights of Mapuche people living in Argentina and Chile. This sample of her accomplishments only hints at the full breadth of her public engagements, which carry her rich and critical sociological imagination well beyond the walls of the Ivory Tower. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Brown. We now come to the heart and soul of today's event, the awarding of degrees. We start today with the PhD, our highest degree. Today we will honor 13 scholars who have earned our highest degree, the Doctorate of Philosophy. For each of our PhDs, the road to the doctorate has been an impressive journey. Each has completed several years of graduate coursework, researched and written a master's thesis, taken oral examinations, and ultimately embarked on a major original research project. The project was then carried out and analyzed in a dissertation that can run anywhere from 200 to 500 or more pages. The title of each graduate's PhD dissertation is published in the program. The PhD is symbolized by the colored hood of the Doctor of Philosophy. You'll notice that all the faculty members have such a hood. The colors on the hood signify the degree and the university from which we graduated. Today, each newly minted PhD will receive the blue and gold hood of UC Berkeley from his or her dissertation committee chair or another faculty member. We now begin the conferral of the Doctor of Philosophy degrees. Will the PhD and MA candidates please stand up and line up in the right aisle? Professor Mara Loveman will hand out the scrolls. Okay, we'll go in alphabetical order. Our first recipient is Carmen Marie Brick. Carmen will be hooded by Michael Borovoy, Dissertation Committee Co-Chair. Carmen's dissertation is titled "The New Welfare Capitalism: The Failed Liberal Projects of the Post-Industrial Period." Joshua Choper, hooded by Neil Fligstein, Committee Chair. Intragenerational mobility and inequality in local labor markets. Margaret R. Eby, hooded by Armando Laramion, Dissertation Co-Chair. Expertise, Dissent, and Identity in American Eugenics, 1907 to 1927. Alinaya Sibila Lakta Fabros, hooded by Michael Borovoy, Chair. Orderly displacements, migrant labor markets, system protections, gendered states, and the making of a global working class. Kristen George. Hooded by Kim Voss, Dissertation Chair. Loosing the Bonds of Wickedness When Abolitionists Won the Churches. Andrew Yeager. Hooded by Michael Borovoy, dissertation chair. From clean tech to carbon tech, the new political economy of climate change. Antonia Mardones Marshall, hooded by Mara Loveman, dissertation chair. Who is Afro-descendant? Classification struggles and legal recognition in Argentina and Chile. Meghna Nutraj Mukherjee, hooded by Raka Ray, dissertation chair. Immaculate Reconception, Redefining Health and Reproductive Risk Using Prenatal Genetic Testing. Maria Fatima Santos. Hooded by Mara Loveman, committee member. Public Defenders at Work, Challenging and Legitimizing State Violence in Brazil's Penal Courts. Jessica Shermer, hooded by Neil Fligstein, committee member. Markets, Politics, and the Missing Middle in Federal Housing Policy. Mary Shai, hooded by Mara Loveman, dissertation chair. Settlers' Republic, Land, Infrastructure, and the Emergence of New Technologies of Government in the United States, 1789 to 1869. Skylar Wang, hooded by Eliza Brown and Ann Swidler, committee members. Hybrid Intimacies, Online to Offline Relations in the Platform Era. Paula Winnicki Brostowski, hooded by Michael Borovoy, dissertation chair. Organizing Despite Precarity, immigrant, formerly incarcerated, and temp workers on strike. Let's have a round of applause for all of our new PhDs. We also confer the master's degree. The MA is significant in that it requires original research prior to the student embarking upon a project of the scope of a dissertation. And the hope is that a student's MA research may be the basis of their first publication. Today we recognize 3 recipients of the degree of Master of Arts. MA grads, please come forward when I call your name. Janae Carpenter. Maria S. Smith. Sarah Merchant. Let's have a round of applause for the MA candidates. And now it is the turn of the undergraduates. I call upon my colleagues to assist in reading the names and distributing the scrolls. Professors Joanna Reed and Laura Enriquez will read the names of the graduating seniors. Professors Marina Romani and Ricardo Hammer will hand out the commencement scrolls. Professors Mary Kelsey and Lale Babahanian will be giving out the gold cords to the honors students. We will be using the aisles for this part of the ceremony. Will the first row of candidates please stand up and line up in the aisle to your right? Everyone else, please remain seated as it is important to keep the aisles clear.
Valerie Romero. Maria G. Morales Oviedo. Mariah Marie Matter. Diamond Cassidy Holland. Nida Zahid. Jamaica Marie Aber. Catherine Swanson. Sebastian Marie. Anahi Garcia. Oh, I'm sorry. Anahi Garcia. Brittany Pyers. Mika Guinto Panello. Catherine Sasaki. Ryan John Stewart. Elizabeth Dami. Vivian Cito. Dayanara Robledo Campos. Thao T. Truong. Brittany Curiel Moreno. Bernadette Raimundo Torres. Lucia Erlen Panopio Cruz. Jillian Rousseau. Wesley Vega. Marlene Janeth Hernandez Perez. Sarah Orozco. Leila Karkori. Sabrina Herrera. Amber Goring. Katia Lara Olivas. Christy Wynn Lay. Isabel Rosalie Torres. Trevor Rogers. Alyssa Renee Jones. Elise Inveen. Leila Riyazati. Sophia Merriweather Balusky. Elisa Aoyong. Nane Petrosian. Cecilia Jean Wolfkill. Rochelle Valdez. Tetsuro Takao. Jongwon Han. Jaeun Rachel Kim. Jimena Velasco. Okay. Rosalind Castillo. Taylor Gutierrez. Wait a sec. Priscilla Lopez. Mia Liu. Fernanda Natalia Frausto. Dalia Brito. Galilea Hernandez Angeles. Eileen Acosta. Isabel Zen Fenning. Matthew Littlejohn. Sergio Adrian Allen. Cindy Lee. Lily Ye. Nuria Melissa Alegria Pais. Andrew Bang. Young. Ying Zhao. Kaylin V. Alexandra Hernandez Salazar. Pedro Rodriguez. Olga Rodriguez. Giselle Gabriela Sariñaja Aldana. Emma Hamilton. Molly Kate West. Jessica Shim. Angel Cristina Morales Martinez. Jocelyn Gaitan. We'll just wait a second. Trayvon Lamonte Hendricks. Aviana Del Fiero Lemon. Jade Shu Schlam. Caitlin Cancel Aquino. Melina Mora Barajas. Eliana Kimberly Galan. Maya Banuelos. Bryce Michael Wong. Ella Hope Diamond. Rithika Kupalm. Ava Rastegarfar. Trisha Nadine Sanchez. Guadalupe Tealos. Sumin Park. Jordan Alexandria Munzig. Veronica Aguilar. Estrella Itzel Casas Saldana.
Michelle Talley. Michelle Towley. Xochitl Moreira. Jose Manuel Martinez Renaga. Brittany Donathan. Annette Alvarado. Alexandra Ward. Elizabeth Eileen Volese. Debbie Garcia. Brianna Michelle Lunar Castillo. Nguyen Trong Tao Vu. Isabel Martin. Henry Dean Morse. Monica Aviar Castillo. Natalie Zamora. Diana Lisbeth Franco Perez. Kelly Barron Aguirre. Rashano Razma. Marie Joanna Agustin. Frederick Alexander Johnson. Malika Sheher Bano. Navke. Safia Ahmed. Natalie Watanabe. Catherine Madison. Clara Ciara Quetzali Lopez Haro. Esmeralda Lopez Salcedo. Rachel Sum Lu. Anna Zelaya. Jesse Quiroga. Isabella Antonelli. Natalia Villaseñor Carrillo. Caitlin Morgan Carpenter. Nora Claire Linnan. Jenna Lucy Risi. Andrea Ryu. Johanna J. Yee. Deborah Kim. Danielle Jiun Chu. Chow. Savannah Lynn Rice. Ana Julia Silva Serra. Anthony Marco Espinosa Zavala. Michael Salom. Serena Danielle Cisneros. Paul Timothy Bonafi Caparil. Brianna Angelique Hernandez. Jenny Ma. Gabriela Trujillo. On to new win. Garima Gupta. Andrew Joseph Jackson. Joshua Jabir Chavarria. Josiah Jabir Chavarria. Alec Jofo. Daniel Milotin. Kira Casey. Amory Alcala. Brianna Gutierrez. Randall Montgomery Bowser. Faustina Odio Dalit. Lark Chang Ye. Mary Carmen Marmolejo Espinosa. Giselle Aguilar. Nyla Tune Williams. Jessica Milin Tron. Isabel Alisa Reynoso. Valentina Rivera. Hannah Morningstar Martinez. Cesar Roman Garcia. Andrew Zepeda Monroy. Diamanda Morgado Ibáñez. Karen Nugent Vo. Nguyen Vo. Nereida Mendez. Danu Yu. Dana Yu. Elias Camilo Montes. Sandy Michelle Valdez. Elizabeth Jenny Waters Yeager. Leiga. Ray Dox Kim. Lilibeth De Leon. Mikhail Yosef Toldai. Ashley Osorio. Yanelit Madriz Zarate. Martin Lara. Somdeng Danny Thongsi. Aaron Godfrey. Natalia Padilla. Ashley Alexa Gonzalez Marin. Enrique Marisol. Will the senior honors candidates please stand up and line in the aisle to your right?
This year, we are conferring degrees on 16 honor students. These students participated in a year-long honor course in which they conducted their own research projects and wrote up their findings in an honors thesis. Their instructors tell us these projects were fascinating and of high quality. Some have been encouraged to pursue publication of their work. Their thesis titles are listed in the graduation program, and I would like to invite the honors instructors, Professor Lale Bebehanyan and Professor Mary Kelsey, to join me to award each honor student a gold honor cord for their accomplishments. Balam Javier Vigil. Auten Nascimento de Souza, Jr. Adriana Temprano. Ruhao Irene Payne. Genevieve Bellavance. Daisy Garcia. Celeste Rodriguez. Molly Caroline Piggott. Melanie Lynn Palma. Sonia Cedillo. Isabella Ayres Calcagno. Alma Gabriela Rodríguez. Denise Méndez. Elizabeth Grace Brown. Johnny Smith.
Now for an age-old symbol of passage. When tasseled caps were standard academic apparel, undergraduates wore their tassels on the right, graduates wore them on the left. Bachelor's graduates, please put on your caps with the tassels on the right. Now, leaving your tassels on the right, stand and face your families, friends, and honored guests. Switch your tassel from right to left now. I present to you the fantastic class of 2024. And now, to bring this momentous occasion to a close, I turn the ceremony over to one of our most beloved professors and the recipient of this campus's Distinguished Teaching Award, Professor Lale Babahanian.
Thank you, Dave. God. Okay. Thank you, Dave. Thank you to all our speakers today. Thank you, Professor Harry Edwards, who is a legend of our department, and it's really an enormous honor to be sharing a stage with him. Thank you to our graduate student speaker, who I'm thrilled to now address as Dr. Skylar Wang. And to Nida Zahid, you so beautifully represent everything that makes our undergraduate students so extraordinary. Thank you so much. So let me begin by just expressing how much it means to me to be standing here to conclude this ceremony. Another department legend who is here with us, Professor Michael Buravoy, has given these closing remarks for 40 years. So it's an enormous honor to try and fill his shoes today. So graduates, we're all here gathered here to celebrate you. And my role in concluding this ceremony is to acknowledge and thank all the people who have invested their labor and love into helping you make it here today. Let me begin with our amazing faculty, whose brilliance and passion for teaching is what inspires and brings out the best in our students every day. And just as crucial to that teaching mission are our graduate students, your amazing GSIs who play, yes, can we get for them? There is no overstating the role that you all play in teaching and supporting our students, and we're so grateful to you for that. When all of us come together, we transform our classrooms into magical spaces where we dissect all the problems of the world and seek out possibilities for a better future. But we can never take for granted that these magical spaces we create together exist inside a massive institutional bureaucracy. And their existence is only made possible by the work of our amazing staff who help us to navigate and maneuver and tame that bureaucracy every day. So let me take a minute to acknowledge and thank all the staff whose work may not always be visible to you, but without whom none of this would be possible. And let me introduce you to them, beginning with our Director of Student Services, Ann Myers, who oversees so much of the work of our department. And always right next to her is the great magician, Rebecca Chavez, who somehow manages to organize our curriculum and schedule our classes in the chaos of a university with hundreds of classrooms and courses. And it's Erin Dubois who maintains our computers. It's Holly Lee who keeps our finances in order. It's Alina KC who manages our department communications and events. Chantel Mitchell who guides all our faculty through their academic personnel cases. And Tamar Young, who does a little of pretty much everything while keeping our department always full of laughter. And of course, the great Michael Schneider, who manages our department with this incredible ability of somehow always transforming chaos into calm. So these are all the people who keep our department running smoothly on a daily basis and who have been working tirelessly on planning and organizing today's ceremony. I also want to recognize the work that goes into giving us the great privilege of sharing our classrooms with students from all over the world. It's Jenny Cornett Carrillo and her team, Louise Hahn, Shannon Buckley Shackley, Emily Normeel, and Bridget Lair, who run our globally renowned international program. Thank you. They bring a rich diversity of international students into our classrooms and ensure that the knowledge we share together here in Berkeley gets projected with them back all across the world. And finally, your beloved undergraduate advisors, Christina Rojas and Sang Saley. Christina and Sang deal with every crisis, concern, and challenge that arises for our students, personally watching over each and every one of them through their academic journeys. And it's Catherine Norton and Amy Asick who play that role for our grad students. It's the amazing support they provide that makes this department, year after year after year, the #1 graduate program in the country. All of us, all of the people I've just named, we get up every day and we give our best. And we do so because we believe in you. Because we believe that there is no greater mission than helping to prepare you to go out into the world and not only succeed in it, but succeed in changing it. And while every graduation is a special occasion, today is extra special for all of us, because you are the class of 2024, and you have achieved something truly exceptional. Not only have you exhibited all the hard work and determination it takes to graduate from UC Berkeley, but you've done so under unprecedentedly difficult conditions. You are a generation that has had to pursue your higher education under the extreme conditions of a pandemic. You've had to learn through Zoom and online classes, and you've had to withstand prolonged periods of social isolation, all kinds of anxieties, and for many, even grief. The challenges of the past 4 years have been at times overwhelming, but through them all, you have persevered and made it here today. And out of those extraordinary challenges, you have carved out extraordinary possibilities. And that leads me to that other thing that makes you, the class of 2024, truly exceptional. You are a generation that has launched the largest student movement this country has seen in decades. Your Gaza solidarity encampments and divestment campaigns have spread like wildfire to campuses all across this country and now throughout the world. You are a generation that is brilliantly bold and passionately committed to fighting for a more just world. You are truly awe-inspiring. So let me conclude this acknowledgments and these thanks to all those who have made today possible by finally getting to the most crucial acknowledgement of them all. Graduates, there is no one who has invested more in enabling you to make it here today than your families and loved ones. Your parents, your grandparents, your siblings, your godparents, all of those who have traveled to be here today, as well as those who can't physically be here with us, but who have invested and sacrificed so much to make this day possible. So graduates, please join me in giving the biggest round of applause to all your family and loved ones who have helped you make it here today. And finally, I want to especially acknowledge all of you first gens. Those of you who have fulfilled the dream of being the first in your families to graduate from college. Can all of you first-generation students please stand so that you and your families can be recognized for this enormous achievement? So let me now finally bring this ceremony to a close by speaking to all of you graduates on behalf of all of us who have gathered here to honor you. We are so deeply proud of you. We are proud of the education that you have worked so hard to attain. Now we want you to take that education out into the world and use it to do three things. Use it to provide for and take care of yourselves and your families. Use it to be of service to people and to your communities. And finally, never forget what makes you a sociologist and use it to fight like hell for a better world. Congratulations, class of 2024. So we now really bring this ceremony to an end. The faculty are going to now recess row by row through the two middle aisles. The graduates will follow after the faculty, and audience members, please remain seated until all of the graduates have left the auditorium.